Brother, are you all right?
No, I am not all right. I just shared a bottle of Kanar with Damar. That rhymes.
You're drunk.
Of course I'm drunk.
Well, good afternoon, evening, and morning, everyone. No, I'm not drunk at the moment, but I'm surprised because did you see the amount of stupid on movie night last night? Ugh.
I, in fact, did not, actually.
2 words. Nephilim free.
Double feature.
Okay, I just was a little sick. Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this guy still around?
Oh, yeah, he's still around, and he was spewing all sorts of stupidity. And the most frustrating part about it was it wasn't it wasn't that he was saying a lot of different stupid. He honed it down to like 3 or 4 things, but he kept repeating it. So, as everyone can see, we do have the full crew here this week. First time in a while, but hey, that's what happens when you have the wonderful time of year and people have other stuff to do. So, for those who don't actually remember who the full crew is, as you can see from the initial icon, we have Geostraba.
Hi. It's been a while. Thanks for having me on.
We have Thoughts by Jay Brown.
It's been a while for me, too.
And for those who remember the last episode just a couple weeks ago, BM Furball.
It's too goddamn early in the morning.
Hey, I hear that coffee maker in the background. Shut up.
Besides, you agreed to this.
What is your local time right now?
5 a.m.
Okay, well.
Yeah, my dog is still in her dog bed and giving me puppy dog eyes.
Tough shit.
Basically looking at me like I'm an idiot.
Hey, Sai.
Well, you have to admit, it is going to be easier once you relocate.
That is true. That is true. And I'm not counting or anything, but let me look at my counter.
75 days.
86 days.
And
86 days
he's
until I
going to
get
have that
home.
honeydew list to do.
I gotta move. So that honeydew list is gonna be pack shit.
wait a minute. So you're not going to have the army do that for you? Or do you not
the
trust
army's gonna
them?
do. No. There is something enjoyable about just sitting there and watching other people pack up all your shit and not having to do a damn thing. But I still have to get other crap ready. It's still a pain in the ass.
True, it has been a while since I've done that type of PCS, but yeah, you have to go through and isolate the shit you don't want them to pack up, which, no joke, includes the trash.
Yes. I have gotten to the other end of a move at one point and unboxed a bag of trash. Because they pack everything.
Well, what's that meme I shared for the veteran stock? Chief, your instructions weren't specific enough?
So, for those
But
who...
my replacement gets here in just over 30 days, so that's great.
Wow, they actually are giving you guys a bit of a crossover for a proper pass down?
Yeah, like a week before they're sending me up to Camp Casey where there is no crossover and they have a 4-month gap.
Oh, that's gonna hurt. But you won't have to worry about it because you won't be there.
Yeah.
So, for those who are not in the Discord, where we actually do have an area of the UDSA set up just for the Kanar with Damar and Star Trek sci-fi related topics, we have a treat for you this week. And by treat, I mean wonderful torture. So I know Gio has recently gone and watched it as a refresher. Jay, you did get to catch it.
I got all of it.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah. So, do we torture the public
Well-
with that couple minutes there just after the introduction? Because
Actually, I think, Jared, it's more humane to waterboard them instead.
I could agree with that one.
well, the reason why I ask is because as I was going around finishing the few errands that I had to do earlier this afternoon, because I'll admit it, after movie night, my ass was in bed until just after 1 in the afternoon. I rewatched the video, got to the wonderful reminder of this jackass's horrible attempts at humor, and thought to myself, no, we should skip over portions of the video that like that. But then I was like, wait a minute, why? What purpose should I give? I mean, we should give people the full primer that is, oh, what did I call them? Shit shives?
Something along those lines. For, how do I want to put this? For a guy who claims to understand Star Trek a lot, he sure doesn't understand the real world.
And even then, he messes up Star Trek too. And, you know, let me go ahead and get everything set up so we can both torture everyone in here and the audience. Come on. There we go. And bam!
You're going to subject me to it again?
Oh, of course. And here's the thing. I'm in control of the pause button, so this will actually make it easier. And I just have to say, that momentary initial pause, just the look on his face is like, oh, you smug asshole.
Yeah, my fist is clenching involuntarily, and I don't understand why.
So let's go ahead and make sure that we can all hear this with no echo.
People living in Star Trek's United Federation of Planets owe an awful lot to Nicholas Meyer.
Now, at that point, I will agree with you.
That's about the only thing.
Yeah, we'll see where he goes from here. But before I continue playing again, I'm going to make sure that the audience heard it without any echo or issue.
Yes, you did, Logical. Yes, you did.
Logical, you're here. You're going to enjoy it because it's not so much this smackable face. It's our response to what he actually has to say. But since I'm not hearing any comments about echoing, let's go ahead and play it a little further.
Not only did he co-write and direct what a lot of us consider to be the two best Star Trek movies ever made, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
What? No love for Generations?
Oh, no. You know what? I'm actually gonna say it. I think Star Trek First Contact was better than The Wrath of Khan.
You know, I would definitely put them neck and neck. I have more of an affinity for Wrath of Khan because that was actually my introduction to Trek. But yeah, First Contact is definitely up there.
No, when it comes to the introduction of Trek, the first series I actually watched was Enterprise
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm young.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're one of them young whippersnappers.
Yeah, the other ones, Deep Space Nine, I only watched like 3 or 4 years ago for the first time. Voyager, I think I saw the last 2 seasons or so when they... No, that's not true. I know that
I'm
I
pretty
saw
sure
Enterprise when they came out, but all other ones I only saw afterwards.
I'm pretty sure back at my house, my mom's house, in my old bedroom, is the entire first season of Voyager recorded from television on VHS.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
That would not
Wait a
surprise
second.
me.
How many VHS cassettes are those? That must be, let me think. So that's 170 episodes times...
No, it's just
that's
the first season.
just the first season.
Yep.
Okay,
Just the
that
first
was
season.
16 episodes, I think.
I think so, yeah.
16 hours, so 4 to 5 discs, I'd say, or tapes.
So
Yeah, next time I go home, I'll have to look.
So, logical troglodyte, undiscovered country? What the fuck is he talking about? Khan, yeah, of course, but give me a break. Now, see, here's the thing, logical. I actually agree with him on undiscovered country being one of the... It is in my top 3 of Star Trek movies.
Agreed.
Simply because I enjoyed that mix where it did have relevant action similar to Wrath of Khan, but at the same time, it actually really hit home on the political side and really ended up being a great ending, in my opinion, to the overall career arc and story arc that was the original series crew for the franchise itself. Because you were looking at the beginning of the end of the tensions between the Klingons and the Federation that were an underwriting plot throughout the entirety of Trek up to that point. It was very much an analogy of the U.S. Soviet Union issues, with the wall having come down, 2-3 years before Star Trek 6 was released publicly?
I think less than 2 years, actually. Star Trek 6 came out in 1991, 92. And are you sure? I'm pretty certain 1991. Let me check. Let's see. 1991.
Late 91?
December 6, 1991. So yeah, two
Yeah.
years and 2 months approximately.
Yeah. So,
on the other hand, the Soviet Union was still in existence, I think, at that point.
Yeah, but it
had just collapsed.
It had just collapsed, but the breaking down of the Soviet Union had started earlier with the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yes,
and that really started the shockwaves through. Yeah, I know I have issues with the acting and presentation. I'll give you the political analysis. That's a great point. Yeah, for those who haven't heard before, I actually did a, not exactly a thesis paper, but a actual analysis paper of Star Trek 6 for a film analysis course that I took. And at first the professor was like, wait a minute, you're doing a Star Trek movie for this? It's like, yeah, Star Trek 6. There's actually a lot of political underpinnings to it with relevant historical implications. He's like, okay, normally I would say no, but I'm intrigued.
We all know that Praxis is an analogy for Chernobyl.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. But as far as I know, Star Trek isn't about the U.S., but the humanity of this pale blue dot. Overall, Bjorn, yes. However, when you look at how the series was written, it was definitely written from a Western civilization, Western culture attempt at utopia mindset, which has been predominantly influenced by the United States of America and its culture. Not entirely,
Yes.
but mostly.
You can actually see that it was done by Americans and not by Brits by the fact that in TOS they were still talking about the fact that some crimes were punished by death or with death even in the Federation, which is something I don't think would have happened if the series was done in, let's say, Great Britain, because they had just abolished the death penalty about 5 or 6 years earlier. Is that agreeable, or am I doing a fuck up right here?
I can see that.
Yeah. That's the thing. Gio, if we didn't agree with you, someone would have spoken up immediately. You know that there's no hesitation for that amongst this crowd.
Yeah, on the other hand, this awkward silence is slightly worrying.
Well, in that case, let's get back to the video.
He also co-wrote Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, and that's a terrific movie in its own right, but there's one particular moment that profoundly changes our understanding of life in the Federation.
Admiral, there be whales here.
A marshmallow.
That was Star Trek V.
I know. But if he's talking about game changers in Star Trek lore, the marshmallow is definitely on the list.
That it is, and you know what? I think it was Kraft actually did a production run of that device as a dispenser for their jumbo marshmallows.
It's actually getting better. In the novel version of the movie, there was a gag that Bones actually reprogrammed the Enterprise A's computer to display marshmallow instead of marshmallow. It just didn't make it into the screenplay.
Nice.
So they cut out half of the joke.
Dora, you're not the only one that thinks that.
Actually, I think Star Trek 4 is actually among the best, for the simple reason that it deals when you compare the movies to the episodes of the different series, what most episodes actually deal with is not an adversary, an enemy, but it's a problematic situation that needs to be resolved in some way. And that's actually what Star Trek 4 is doing. All other movies are not doing this, which is why I actually think that in terms of keeping the feel compared to the series, Star Trek 4 is among the best, at least in the top 3.
It definitely does stick to the heart of Star Trek to that point, and also it really does tie in with that whole groundwork of the issues that Star Trek is addressing is still poignant and relevant to society that we are currently in and dealing with. Even still today, there are still environmental issues that need to be kept in mind and addressed in an appropriate manner, so we quite literally don't fuck ourselves out of a planet to live on.
Well, I'm actually kind of pessimistic on that. I think we've already fucked it up to a degree that we can't repair it anymore.
Oh. I guess I still have a little bit of hope for, and even if it is naive, sue me.
That
Be
change
careful,
is
this is
so
America, they could do
profound
that.
and establishes the everyday world inhabited by the heroes of Star Trek as being so different from our world that it forces me to wonder, how do the economics of Star Trek actually work? So, Star Trek IV. Our heroes have just arrived in San Francisco circa 1986, having traveled back in time from the 23rd century. Kirk steps out into traffic and is nearly run over by a car, presumably because in his century they have self-driving cars that automatically stop for pedestrians, which means entire generations of people have grown up not being taught to look both ways before crossing the street.
Stop.
Yeah, I had a feeling that we were going to want to stop at that point.
Okay. That Voyager episode, the 37th, they clearly all knew what a car is.
Yeah, I mean, Tom was rebuilding one.
Yes.
Well,
on the holodeck.
on the holodeck, yeah, after that episode, and he...
Yeah.
But Tom was also a
History buff.
less than informed 20th century history buff. And even then, the criticism that came to my mind was every time that you go to Earth in the 23rd or 24th century, you don't see very many, if any, ground-based vehicles. Everyone's walking around when they actually show it. Even when you get close to what would have been the streets, people are going around on foot, and if they needed to move something, you have your anti-grav lifts. And for what would be the Federation equivalent of a car, those were the shuttlecraft. So, were you not even really paying attention to that sort of minutia here, Steve?
Either that, or Kirk is an oblivious dipshit.
Well, Shatner certainly is.
Yeah.
Maybe he just didn't know at this point that the cameras were rolling.
Well, not just that, but here's another thing. If you want to compare this crew towards later iterations, it very well could be that the early crew, because of what they were doing and everything, would have changed. However, here's a bit of canon that would explain why, Steve, you really need to go back and watch the original series, because you bet your ass Kirk knew what a car was and where they were utilized.
I mean, he had time traveled before, at least twice, I think.
Twice to...
They went back to the 60s.
Once to the 60s, and also they went back a little further. It was a little bit further with the aid worker that Bones wanted to save, but she actually was important to the timeline and had to die.
One of the best episodes so far ever was called The City on the Edge of Forever.
Yep. So they had 2 instances of Kirk going back in time to Earth, to America, when automobiles were a thing. He fucking knew, Steve. It was more...
LRJ88's comment is kind of funny.
The only person that can just walk across the street like that is Meatloaf.
I don't get it.
As long as Rocky Horror's not around.
Yeah.
Is there an internal joke that I don't understand with this comment?
Meatloaf was the name of a singer who's quite portly now. He used to be really skinny, but he put on weight and made a comeback in the late 80s, early 90s, and got famous for his song Bad Out of Hell, I think it was, or the album was Bad Out of Hell. Bad Out of Hell 2.
Bad Out of Hell, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pull up an image of him.
No, I would more equate how they were walking around the streets there, my everyday life here in Korea, where people who are either walking, driving, or on bikes don't give a shit about anyone else.
Well, and not just that, you also, when you are in an unfamiliar area and you're literally just walking around into an area, are you really looking down at the immediate vicinity, or are you looking up and around at all other markers to get your bearings?
Well, that depends on if we're in the smartphone age, because if we're in the smartphone age, you're looking down at your phone.
And oblivious to even more. But again, the people that he's criticizing are well beyond that, hypothetically. And also, it's in a time before even the car phone became a popular item. let alone the cell phone.
Wait a second. Star Trek 4 was in the cinema in 1985, I think.
85, 86, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere
See.
about that.
So the car phone
86.
the car phone was an available technology, but it was not widely available. It was definitely in its infancy. Because I actually remember
It is.
my mother had a car phone around 90 to 94.
Yeah, and it was a bit costly prohibitive, too.
Yeah.
I got that photo you sent me that looks like Jack Black went back to taking cocaine.
All right.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, no.
you're
Oh,
not.
no. I know.
Anyway, they make it across the street, and Kirk witnesses someone buying a newspaper from a coin-operated street rack. He turns to his comrades and says, "They're still using money. We've got to find some." Also, they still have newspapers. How the hell far back in time did we come? Have whales even evolved yet? Whatever.
Okay, jackass. See, Steve, if you really cut back on this sort of dumb fuckery, your videos might be more tolerable.
I might not need an oven mitt to watch them. Or in my case, a stack of work papers.
But back to the pain.
Or the hilarious death of print media isn't the point. The point is, Star Trek IV is the first work of the franchise that clearly establishes that in the 23rd century, they don't use money. This is confirmed by another scene a bit later in the film when Kirk is having dinner with Dr. Gillian Taylor. The time comes to pay the check, and Gillian turns to Kirk, who has told her the truth about who he is and where he comes from, and says, "Let me guess, you don't have money in the future either." And Kirk is like, "We don't." Now, Nicholas Meyer was responsible for rewriting the portions of the Star Trek IV script that take place in 1986. I don't know if the lines about there being no money in the future were his, or leftovers from an earlier draft that he kept in, or
something that is canonically relevant and him actually being a part of that canon, knew that and had it there from the first place because it's always been a plot point. And
No argument for me.
And feel free to make a comment about the face that I paused him on.
That's his wife has caught him saying something sexist again. And she's about to bitch slap him.
I would pay to see that.
I would too, actually. If I hadn't already spent that money on helping Sean.
Yeah.
How much more to your cause?
Actually, I think that's the face he makes when the vehicle he just cut off turns on its red and blue lights.
Oh shit. Psystrike, they knew cars from the Mafia Planet too. Yes, a piece of the action. Again, for Shives to have said that, what, did he not know about cars and automobiles? Just shows how little he actually cares about not just consistency throughout the franchise he is evaluating, but his own intellectual consistency and integrity. Oh, wait. It's Steve Shives. Never mind.
I had to approve that one, Jared. I had to approve it.
Oh, LRJ88, you are awesome. And you know what? For that, you've earned this.
Harv Bennett's idea. Maybe it was even Roddenberry's idea. He snuck into Harv Bennett's office and was paperclipping a note onto the script on the desk when Harv came in and was like, "Roddenberry, what did I say would happen if I saw your ass in here again?" And then security dragged Roddenberry away, and the whole time he was screaming, "But I'm an executive consultant on the film!"
Producer. Executive producer. Because he made the frickin' franchise, you jack off.
By the way, read Logical's comment about the freeze frame.
I make that face when Babe tells me I'm not getting any for a while. Hear that
Did
often,
I mention
huh?
how many days it is until I go home? Did I mention how many days it is till I go home? What do you mean a while, dick?
An executive consultant! And then Hart turned
Producer.
around and read the note and was like, no money in the future. I like it. Meyer, put that in. And Meyer was there too, I guess, quietly sipping a coffee as the sounds of the guards pummeling Roddenberry with truncheons were dimly audible from the hallway. However those lines got there, they were in the draft that Nick Meyer handed in, and they made it on screen, so, for my money...
And yet you're ignoring all the prior references in the original series about a lack of currency within the Federation.
I just noticed the coffee cup that he gave to Nicholas Myers.
I'm wondering, do you know if there are references to no money existing in the Federation in the animated series? Because I can't recall anything about it.
In the animated series, I don't recall there being any episodes where currency would have been a potential factor in the plot or even mentioned. I don't know.
I don't think there was, no.
I don't know. I'm almost done with Stargate Atlantis, so I might as well go back to the animated series after that.
I don't know if I've ever
Atlantis.
actually went through the entire animated series.
I haven't.
I have. It's only just 13 episodes or whatever anyway. You
Yeah.
can do it in one day if you really want to.
Scrolling through the first season of the animated series, the last episode is the Jihad.
Yeah, well, see,
That's the last episode. That's a counterclock incident, isn't it? I think.
Let's see here. A team comprised of various intergalactic experts. Among them are Kirk and Spock. Must recover the artifact known as the Soul of Score. The theft must be kept secret, or the Galactic Holy War could break out.
LRJ, don't worry about that. I'm actually intended on saving the audience and rest of the crew from that level of hell in this video.
Did you catch that? Nick Meyer deserves credit. I did it again! For establishing this particular aspect of Star Trek's utopian future. Once it was established, it stuck. Star Trek The Next Generation debuted the year after Star Trek IV, and it reiterated the notion that money was no longer in use on Earth at the end of its first season in an episode called The Neutral Zone. While the climax of this story...
Wasn't there references even prior to that?
I think there was, if I remember correctly.
Almost like just about in every episode involving a particular species, but we'll get to them in a little bit.
Is the first appearance of the Romulans in TNG. Most of the episode is spent following a trio of 20th century humans who are discovered in suspended animation and revived aboard the Enterprise. One of them is this guy, Ralph Offenhouse, who wakes up on a spaceship in the 24th century and is like, "Where's my money? I want to check on my money. I have lots of money and I want it. I want my money." Data seems to find Ralph interesting as an anthropological curiosity. Riker and Picard regard him with a mixture of pity and annoyance. At one point, Ralph says to Picard, "I need to check how my investments are doing. Get me a copy of the Wall Street Journal."
All right, from NANA towards me and the rest of the crew. Only seen a few episodes of DS9. I'm confused about how the Ferengi operated in the station. Don't they use money? Yes, that's the thing. DS9 was a a galactic trading post. It was a convergence of trade lines, and the Ferengi have a currency that is essentially a galactic currency by that point in the lore, gold pressed latinum, which actually he does reference here, and that's the thing, is you can have, the Star Trek does have currencies available outside of the Federation and between different, if you want to call them nation states just for ease of reference, for a planetary comparison to what we're dealing with now, that's what you have, where essentially gold pressed latinum would be the US dollar, where it is.
Think of Deep Space Nine. Think of Deep Space Nine as a duty-free shop in an airport.
Yeah, actually, that is a great way to look at it.
Yep.
And Picard is like, the Wall Street Journal? When were you frozen? The Pleistocene? Picard goes on to tell him, look, you've been on ice for over 300 years. A lot has changed. There's no more hunger, there's no more want, there's no longer a selfish need to accumulate things. We've grown out of our infancy. So suck on that, you greedy jerk. Years later, Picard explains it again to Lily Sloan in the film Star Trek First Contact. Lily, who is from the 21st century and has survived the devastation of the Third World War, marvels at the resources required to build a ship the size of the Enterprise. And Picard says, the economics of the future are somewhat different.
Not so much different from what Lily was dealing with. So, think back to First Contact. Was there an actual currency being used between all the different factions?
I don't think so.
No.
Apart from probably precious metals.
Yeah, I don't remember anything specifically referenced.
No, and even then, you wouldn't really call that a currency, but more a barter system. Because
Yes.
there was a line where Lily asked, how much does a ship like this cost? I mean, it took me this long just to get enough metal for the cockpit. And that's when Picard replied back with, the economics of the future are slightly different, meaning the access to the materials needed is easier and structured in a far different manner from what she's dealing with in quite literally a post-apocalyptic world. Super chat, $6.66 from NANA. Gio, I only deal with Satan's currency. Hail Satan.
Understatement. He continues, money doesn't exist in the 24th century. The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. Sounds pretty sweet, right? No more poverty, life no longer being defined by the constant struggle to meet basic material needs. But how does that work? And is that just a fantasy? Or is an economy like the one we catch glimpses of in Star Trek actually possible?
Anyone want to venture their own input on that question? Or should we save it to the end?
I want to save mine.
Yeah, let's continue.
And if the Federation doesn't use money, how the hell does it interact with other societies that do use it? Like the Ferengi. The questions of how the economy of the Federation came about, how it works, and how it interacts with economies which operate according to different principles are never explicitly answered on screen. All we can do is make inferences and draw conclusions from evidence found in the various Star Trek films and TV shows.
Really? Inferences when they quite directly say what the setup and situation is?
I seem to remember a lot of Voyager doing a lot of bartering and trading.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they were cut off from the Federation, so that
No,
was an
I
emergency
understand. I was
situation.
just in general. I believe there's several times where on Next Generation, Picard has to negotiate a deal to give something that they have or that they can replicate to another species to offset whatever it is they need to get.
Code of Honor. They basically exchanged vaccines for Tashaya, which in my opinion was a good deal.
Yeah, I mean,
Would have been a much better ending for her.
that's the thing. To say that we're left to inferences and essentially speculation from simple evidences, no. They make them part of the story, part of the plot points, and they have directly throughout Star Trek lore laid the foundation and explanation of the economic side of the Federation. But let's go further and see how much more you fuck it up.
Those inferences and conclusions would carry a lot more weight if they were backed up with a solid grasp of the history and major theories of economics. Unfortunately, when it comes to that, I'm not your guy. But there are books about the economics of
Holy
Star
shit,
Trek,
he was honest.
written by people who actually know about economics. And lucky for you, I can read.
But can you understand
Are you
what
sure?
you read? Anyone else get the vibe like he's an overly confident 8-year-old?
Who just plagiarized a paper? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually... Are you talking about an intelligent 8-year-old or a complete dumb fuck?
I'm going with the dumb fuck.
Oh, so Encounter at Farpoint, Logical Troglodyte, I seem to remember in TNG Episode 1 they charged a purchase to the ship's account. Am I misremembering that? Yes and no. Actually, Steve does mention that and does get to it, and he's not entirely right, but he's not entirely wrong either, so we will correct that when we get to it.
The two major books on the subject are Trekonomics by Manu Saadia and The Economics of Star Trek by Rick Webb.
Audience, wild guess. Do you think he cites one, both, or neither of those books? We'll give him a chance to actually respond. So, one, he doesn't actually quote anything from either book. Two, he does quote from one of them. Or three, he does quotes from both.
Why 3? Why not 1, 2, and 0? That's much better.
No, okay. How many?
Just type in the amount of books you think he cites from.
Both books are fascinating. Reading them taught me more about both economics and Star Trek, and I am deeply indebted to them and their authors for informing and helping to shape the creation of this video. One of the things these books helped me to realize is that much of the shorthand we use to refer to the economy of the Federation is very misleading. For example, it's not at all unusual to hear casual fans and hardcore Trekkies describe the Federation as communist. But based on what we see on screen throughout the franchise, that doesn't seem to be the case. While commerce as we know it doesn't seem to take place within the Federation, the capitalist...
Oh, Kristen Frost.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, that's probably the most accurate description.
By the way, I did just go back to his actual video page to check his citations.
Mm-hmm.
So he's known for citing his sources. Heavy emphasis on the citing there. He didn't cite either one of these books.
But I showed him on screen.
He does cite one of them on screen multiple times.
And Brannery, yeah, it's just poor lighting. Over stylized S makes Cisco's look weird. LRJ88, one reason he doesn't actually cite any of them being he doesn't understand them worth shit.
That's probably the best answer I've heard yet.
notion of private property clearly still exists. Joseph Sisko doesn't charge the patrons at his restaurant for their meals, but it's still his restaurant. his property, his establishment. Captain Picard's family still owns the estate they've lived on for generations, an estate which is the site not only of what looks like a pretty nice house, but also a decent-sized winemaking operation. We also get to see a recreation of Captain Kirk's house when Picard encounters him in the Nexus in Star Trek Generations. At one point, Kirk mentions that he sold this house years ago. Given everything else that's been established about the economics of the Federation, we can assume that Kirk is speaking figuratively, but it also indicates that people can acquire or relinquish ownership of private property through personal transactions. Intellectual property rights still exist as well. There's a whole episode of Star Trek Voyager about that subject, Author, where the holographic doctor fights to be legally recognized as an artist with the right to control the distribution of his work.
Close, but it's more getting himself recognized as an actual being with his own agency and his own rights, which then he could parlay into having more of a say in the distribution of his work. But even then, a human artist would have faced the same issue, because a publisher, if they get to a point where they think the product is good enough for release, they can release it and the artist is shit out of luck.
Actually, Ugly German Truth, Steve is correct. It was introduced canonically in the TOS movies, if you decide to skip out the TOS series, where they've kind of vaguely mentioned it. Referring to as what would Kirk's house matter?
And even then, the Federation is not entirely moneyless. It is currencyless, and it actually is alluded to in the series prior to in the TOS movies. And keep in mind, Star Trek 4 predates TNG. Now, granted, development and storyline plots and factors probably did end up tying in because of the proximity, and Paramount was actually good about having that creative group work both avenues at that time. Nice. S2000 GT Picard wine. Make it Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh no.
Federation society also includes hierarchies, both formal and informal. There's Starfleet, most obviously, which utilizes a military-style rank system and chain of command, but there are also indications throughout the various TV shows and films that quality of life within the Federation can differ dramatically depending on where you are. Earth itself is, as Ben Sisko describes it somewhat resentfully at one point, a paradise, but other Federation worlds, particularly outlying colonies, sometimes seem to have it pretty rough. At least by Federation standards. When you really look...
Yeah, it's almost like if you decide to live on the frontier of anywhere, things aren't... creature comforts are not always readily available.
I seem to remember our country going through a phase of that in our history.
Pretty much every country went through this phase at one point or another.
Well, and even then, in the U.S., you can still say that it's still taking place when you look at areas like Alaska or go 50 miles away from Denver and get into the more rural areas of the Midwest. Not exactly easy to have everything. Could you? Yes, but it has also taken a long amount of time, relatively speaking, for the comforts that more urban areas have had to make it out to that area. I mean, hell, you wished it's still on some of the crappiest internet.
Yeah, and Captain Reynolds and crew, aren't they like on the absolute front edge of the frontier? And they barter all the time just to survive.
Yeah.
Firefly?
Yep.
Come on, Firefly reference?
Mal. Yeah. Although they do go into the core, just not very often because they hate dealing with the feds.
But pretty much everything they do is barter. Or work for money to barter.
Yeah. Yeah.
At it, the Federation functions a lot more like a capitalist economy than a communist one. Sure, it's a fairy tale version of capitalism, with no inequality, no exploitation of labor, everyone's basic needs met and then some, and people motivated by a combination of self-improvement and social responsibility, but hey, that's probably how capitalism is gonna work here before long too.
I seem to remember something going on with the EMH version 1, and yeah.
But here's the thing. I don't think in a society where at least a great part of the human needs are not in the danger of running out because there's just an abundance of them, that you can still talk about this simple left-right, the simple left-right scale of ideologies, and especially when describing the economics. So talking about this thing being communist or capitalistic, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense at all. Because both of those different types of economy deal with how to spread, how to spread the resources available, and that requires that the resources are limited, which means that the entire description of this breaks down once you have unlimited resources.
Yeah, but even then, in Trek, not all resources are infinite. There are some limitations.
Yes. Okay, agreed.
Once we iron out the last few wrinkles, right?
Yeah.
On-screen evidence suggests that the no money, no poverty economy is in place on Earth by sometime in the 22nd century. Apparently, humanity is motivated to iron out those wrinkles following the 1-2 punch of World War III and first contact with the Vulcans.
Yeah, massive kill-off of your population and then realizing, fuck, there are other civilizations not from off this planet, and we can learn from them. Yeah, that tends to be a pretty good motivating factor to get your shit together.
Faced with the prospect of...
Stop. Do you know if there are any references to money still existing or not, or already not anymore existing in Enterprise?
Enterprise...
I don't remember any references.
I don't remember any references to currency. Only them trying to trade when they get to particular outposts as they're going through the first season.
Yes, exactly.
So,
but the few episodes that actually played on Earth, I didn't see anything. Obviously, they visited this Federation bar a few times, right, in San Francisco near the Academy.
The 602, yeah.
Yeah, the 602. But I don't recall them talking about prices or anything, or whether they can afford anything they consume there. So I just say that at this point, at least, Earth internally, there is no currency anymore.
Yeah, which ends up being a foundation and a founding part of the Federation.
Federation Charter, yeah.
Yeah.
10 years later, approximately.
Having to rebuild after a conflict that had left over 500 million people dead, plus finding out that we are not alone in the universe, we decide to finally get our act together. And all it took was an unfathomably devastating worldwide nuclear war and aliens coming down from out of the sky and offering to help. Go us! In The Economics of Star Trek, Rick Webb pegs the Federation as having a proto-post-scarcity economy, which he describes as, quote, essentially European socialist capitalism vastly expanded to the point where no one has to work unless they want to. Webb stops short of calling the Federation economy truly post-scarcity because we see that there are, in fact, certain things of which there is not an unlimited supply. Dilithium crystals, for example, are essential to starship operations, but can't be replicated and have to be mined.
Didn't later Trek actually end up finding ways to have synthetic dilithium?
No, I think they only found a way to recycle broken down crystals.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Voyager, they're still hunting. They can't replicate, and their replicators are working.
Also, did anybody else find the picture of Rick Webb he chose to be a little bit, I don't like you, so I'm just going to find the goofiest picture of you?
S2000 GT, another Picard wine. Chateau up, Wesley.
I think you started to
That
earn
one's
the ring.
better. That one's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, even things that are theoretically in abundance, like food, can still be unevenly distributed throughout the Federation. Famine never seems to be a concern on Earth, but we hear about it on Federation colonies from time to time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's on the brink of the discovered space. Because they just didn't have enough time to ship everything that's needed over.
Well, and even then, technology breaks down, and if you are relying a significant portion on food processors and replicators, when those go down and you're dealing with natural crops, yeah, food scarcity happens really quick in that instance.
Medicine is another example. The Enterprise's mission in the TNG episode Code of Honor involves obtaining a vaccine needed to treat an outbreak of a disease on a Federation planet. During the
that was the
TNG
second
era,
most horrible TNG episode ever. The second worst TNG episode, in my opinion. I just couldn't stand it.
It really, I still ask myself the question, what were you going for here? What was the point? And I still don't have an answer.
Replicators are commonplace, but their availability doesn't seem to be unlimited. In the Deep Space Nine episode For the Cause, we're told that following the Cardassian withdrawal from Bajor, the Federation gave Bajor 2 industrial replicators to help them rebuild. I'm sure
And other places were pissed that they gave them 2. Because how many did they send to Cardassia? 1.
I don't know.
When they actually started giving the Cardassians aid, they started out with just 1 industrial replicator. And here's the thing. They never really say what the actual capacity of the industrial type replicators are, but they also did give a reason for strict control of them for non-Federation planets, which, guess what? At the time, Bajor, not a Federation planet. And does anyone remember the reason that was given?
Why Bajor was not a Federation planet?
No, why the control of industrial replicators to non-Federation planets was controlled.
No idea.
Weapons.
Yeah, well.
Because an industrial replicator would have the ability to do the complex patterns that would make components of weaponry, which could then be used to rearm a populace, which the Federation was not about sharing military-grade weapons technology with anyone outside of their actual partnerships and treaties and the actual Federation. I mean, if anything, Bajor was a burgeoning protectorate, but they wanted, and for the story, were kept very independent. So, yeah, they're only going to get a couple of them, and they're going to be controlled and make sure they're not doing shit that they weren't supposed to.
Industrial were a big help, but I never needs them. The industrial replicators,
Maybe 2 were just enough. Because I don't think we've ever seen an industrial replicator on scale, like one that you can beam down on a planet. Obviously, we had those smaller things on the Enterprise D, But I don't think there's established law on how much output an industrial replicator that is used on a planet actually has.
Yeah, and that
Yeah, are there ever any specs anywhere about what an industrial replicator is?
No.
other than it,
I mean,
other,
clearly there has to be one on Voyager because they keep replicating shuttlecraft.
True.
oh, that's just that was a commercial replicator, not an industrial one. Apart from the famous Picard maneuver and Riker's Captain Morgan chair move, your favorite signature quote and or mannerisms among the bridge crew. Ooh.
Data's rapid head movements. When he would turn his head in a very mechanical way.
Or how about the tonality of "Thank you, Data," as a way of saying "Shut up."
What about no, Mr. Worf? Because if you actually do the statistics, Worf was denied more requests from Captain Picard than Wesley Crusher was.
See, I love Dr. McCoy's "Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor," not a insert joke here.
Yeah, this is specific to TNG, though.
Which even then, McCoy doesn't say it all that TNG. Often.
No, but it became a meme of its own.
True.
Fascinating.
There was a I don't remember what cartoon series it was that was doing a little mockumentary joke of Star Trek, and it was somebody got hurt, and Kirk's like, McCoy, get over here and help him. Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a... Oh, wait, never mind.
Federation provides to Bajor are apparently a gift, not a trade, but not every transaction between the Federation and one of the galaxy's other nation-states works that way. Trade still exists, but that's not hard to figure out. You don't necessarily need money for that. If the Klingons have something the Federation needs, the Klingons can just ask for something the Federation has that they need in exchange. But what happens in situations where such a trade isn't possible? That's one of the reasons money was invented in the first place, to facilitate trades where simple barter isn't sufficient to satisfy all the involved parties. With
not exactly accurate. While that's what in practice it ended up being, it was actually a way to standardize the value of an object.
Money, if you have something I need, I don't have to count on having something that you need that I can trade for it. We can just reach an agreement over how much money you'll accept in exchange for the thing I need, and that will be the trade. And it works because, in the words of Homer Simpson's brain, money can be exchanged for goods and services. Sure, the Federation does have abundant, if not quite unlimited resources, and replicators, so it could probably provide almost anything a potential trading partner could want, but what if it can't? And doesn't a purely barter-based system seem a little, I don't know, primitive and inefficient when we're talking about trade being conducted between massive interstellar empires?
Nope. Not primitive, but it definitely is the most basic and actually leads to the best political alliances and interactions and relationships that you can have. If you show an intent to be mutually beneficial without dicking over your trade partner, they're more likely to help you when you need assistance with something. Imagine that. Cooperative actions.
I'm still trying to figure out if he got his economics education from The Simpsons.
No. Keep in mind earlier, he said that he owes it to the two books that he referenced as being his increased understanding of economics, not just in Trek, but in reality too. And yeah, Fino has it right. What is a stock exchange else but bartering? It is. It's bartering amongst the different goods to establish what their current worth and value is when compared to each other.
that's not actually completely correct, because all that
The
money actually
commodities
is
market is.
yeah, all that money actually is an artificial resource of a limited amount. There's only a limited amount of money, right? You can't print money endlessly. Well, you could, but you'd fuck up the economy.
Inflation.
But
You,
basic,
you haven't looked at the
basically-
American economy, have you?
Yeah, don't tell me about hyperinflation. I know that shit. Yeah, but basically,
Super chat.
having a currency is not in any way different from bargaining with just a natural resource, because it's limited, and everybody accepts it and accepts that it's worth something.
Sure. And from Bjorn Kamek's 100 sex, all the sex. Here's an amount of money to you. Did you give me what I need? I'm entertained, though. Well, if it's not what you need, you're going to have to tell us what more we can do. But I'm glad you're entertained.
Since when do Germans know something about hyperinflation? That was exactly what I was going for.
Yep. And it's not like it didn't happen in the interwar period or...
Yeah.
How can
There's
that
still
possibly...
sometimes restorations going on in the inner cities where they tear down the wallpaper and find that somebody actually used currency as wallpaper in that time period.
Didn't you guys have somebody after the first war that really tried to crack down and help the economy of the country?
Yeah, and it kind of worked,
What
but
was that guy's name?
unfortunately, he didn't have some. Well, let's just say that he had some bad ideas, and everything pretty much went downhill from that point.
Everybody has bad ideas once in a while.
Yeah, I know. Every nation sometimes has a head of state.
Hey! You can stop now. You can stop now.
we get the point.
work? The answer is obvious. They use money. They just do. It's canon. It's established on screen multiple times. The Federation uses money. How can we reconcile that with all the times we've seen Star Trek characters state unambiguously that the Federation doesn't use money? I think it depends on how the money...
Internally. They don't use money internally. That's how.
money is being used and what kind of money we're talking about. It seems pretty inarguable that money isn't used within the Federation. People don't get paid at their jobs, which is fine because everything is free. When Kirk and Picard and others say money doesn't exist in the Federation, that's what they mean. But money does still exist in other places. The most obvious examples of this are the Ferengi. As satires of modern-day capitalists, the Ferengi love money more than just about anything. Their currency of choice is gold-pressed latinum, which is prized because it's rare and impossible to replicate. Webb proposes that
The latinum part. And latinum is, in its most stable form, a liquid, so they actually have to infuse it into gold to make it into a manner more easy to be manipulated and handled. And yeah, and this scene right here is freaking shows why.
Damn it.
Don't you remember that one episode, Who Mourns for Morn?
Yeah, that's where
it
this
turned
one
out
came
that he
from.
was actually carrying around, 2 liters or so of latinum in his stomach.
Something like that. It was 10,000... Was it 10,000 bars worth?
I think it was either 10,000 or 10 million, I think.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see S2 2000 GT's comment? It's Kirk's favorite singer, Shaka Khan.
Wow.
It's on a roll today.
the Federation simply maintains stores of foreign currency, not unlike real-world governments do today. If the Ferengi Alliance wants to purchase some goods from the Federation, they might offer a certain amount of gold-pressed latinum in exchange. And since the Federation's material needs are relatively few, they can accept the deal, give the Ferengi the goods they want, and just squirrel away the latinum for a rainy day. Maybe they use it in future trades with the Ferengi or with other states where it's a valued currency. Maybe they dole it out to Starfleet personnel stationed in areas where they'll be interacting with non-Federation societies that still use money. That would explain how Dr. Crusher is able to buy fabric at Farpoint Station, or how the Starfleet crew on Deep Space Nine can pay for their drinks at Quark's. Watch enough Star Trek and you'll also catch a few references here and there to something called the Federation credit. It's mentioned a few times in classic Trek before the whole moneyless economy thing is firmly established in canon, and it comes up once or twice in the TNG era too. How can we...
And notice how quickly he pivots away from those TNG references. Does anyone else remember what the actual credits of the TNG era actually were?
Yep.
Yeah, because we spoke about it before we went on air, Gio.
Yes, exactly. It's
Furball?
transporter credits. Damn it.
Yeah, there were a couple
What was
episodes.
it?
Transporter credits. So all the references in the TNG era on to Federation credits, they weren't Federation credits, it was transporter credits. And you mainly hear about it from Starfleet officers either talking about their days at the Academy or cadets saying, oh, well, I only have so many transporter credits to get from one place to another. There are a number of...
I don't remember that.
It's in Voyager, it's in TNG. It is in there a few times where they're talking... Like, oh, God, I think it was
in Voyager, it's replicator credits, but that would be not necessarily an income system, but more of a ration.
Yeah, that's rationing because of the energy
Yeah.
limitations.
But they were using it as a bartering system for money, similar to money,
Yeah,
because people would trade their replicator rations.
yeah. So you do have that concept. It's there. It is a thing. It just... Steve, do better. Please. I'm getting tired of this shit.
We accept that the Federation doesn't use money when there's a thing called the Federation credit in what seems to be fairly widespread use? Webb has an answer for that one too. He suggests that the Federation credit isn't actually issued or backed by the Federation government. Instead, it's a widely accepted private currency, like Bitcoin, or those tickets you can win and trade for prizes at the arcade, I guess.
I would agree with the latter being a more accurate thing. You just kind of get it, and you trade it for something that would be of use to you or that you would enjoy having, i.e., easier transportation to a different part of the planet.
You don't
Not
think
only
that they
the
were trying to
planets.
get a really big teddy bear?
Like
Like the tickets at the...
you probably could, but
Maybe they won't. Yeah.
NANA, imagine all the free drugs and booze. Drugs, no. Booze, yes, but it's all synthahol.
So I did a quick search for Federation credits and came up with the memoryalphafandom.com, a fan site that talks about it. The Federation credit was a monetary unit used by the United Federation of Planets. Although it was stated on more than one occasion that the economy of the future was very different, that money had no longer existed on Earth, as from the early as the late 22nd century, or the Federation as late as the 24th century, this medium of exchange did still exist within that period. All known examples of credits used were via transactions outside or on periphery of the Federation, citing Deep Space Nine episode In the Cards, Voyager's Dark Frontier, and Star Trek First Contact. There's a whole like wiki section on this. Again, a fan site, not necessarily canon.
So, yeah. Seems like the details are slipping you there, Steve.
Like I told you before, my understanding of economics is somewhat wobbly.
You don't say.
Oh, also, it's mentions when Uhura buys the triplets for 10 credits.
Yeah.
Just as on
add an outlying Federation-aligned trading port. K7.
Yep.
Before we move on, can I say one more thing about the Ferengi? Because there's this one line Quark has that has bothered me for a long time. It's in the episode The Jem'Hadar, where Quark has invited himself along on a camping trip with Sisko, Jake, and Nog. There's this tension between Sisko and Quark the whole trip, and then they're captured by the Jem'Hadar, and there's a point where Quark just cuts loose on him, calling him out on his anti-Ferengi prejudice and his hypocrisy. Quark says to Sisko, "You know, you humans think you're pretty hot shit, but you forget that you used to be a lot like us. In fact, you used to be worse than us. Look at your history. Slavery, war, concentration camps. We Ferengi don't have anything that approaches that kind of barbarism in our past."
How do they treat their females prior to
No,
the most recent two?
Grand Nagus Nog.
yeah, that's
Who
going to be his
started
next point, though,
reforming.
is his criticism of that comment by Quark.
I'm always... First of all, why is he talking about this quote and then ignores the one in the episode The Little Green Men, where the three Ferengi, Rom, Nog, and Quark actually travel back in time, and Quark does not know about atomic bombs, yet for some reason he knew about concentration camps?
Yeah. You're expecting intellectual consistency and completeness from shit shives?
Intellectual honesty, not necessarily, but completeness, yes, I do. I mean, I would.
Yeah, you need to temper that with him.
Excuse
Oh, are you
me?
saying my standards are too high?
Yes, for him.
We see that Ferengi society is driven by a single-minded devotion to the profit motive. Employers are encouraged to exploit their employees.
Especially if they're family.
Negotiators are expected to try and screw people on deals.
Yeah, it's called winning the deal. Trump! Sorry.
No, there's a difference. Ferengi actually honor the agreements and the treaties they make. Trump does not.
Only when they're the Ferengi only when really pushed with someone who can actually push them back.
Remember rules of acquisition 16 and 17. A deal is a deal, and a contract is a contract is a contract, but only among Ferengi.
Yeah. So even they have some ethical loopholes there.
Are we really supposed to believe, given how we see Ferengi society operating in the 24th century, that slavery is something they never engaged in on any scale at any point in their history?
Now, this point I would actually chalk up to poor writing of the episode and a lack of continuity there, because there were forms of indentured servitude that would be akin to slavery within Ferengi society. But here's the thing. Quark is looking at it from a Ferengi perspective where, well, it's a binding contract between Ferengi. It's not slavery. It's a deal. It's a contract.
Oh, Rule 17.
Now the thing is, and I know some of you bristle when I make this point, Star Trek is totally made up. There are no actual Ferengi. There is no actual Ferengi history. If the writers of Star Trek say the Ferengi never practiced slavery, then the Ferengi never practiced slavery. That's not what bothers me about that line. What bothers me is that it posits a form of capitalism where the most brutal forms of exploitation just never happen. It presents a scenario where the most ruthless and amoral capitalists imaginable can occupy a moral high ground against a utopian society like 24th century Earth because, hey, they might literally worship money, but at least they never own slaves. As if the former, left unchecked, doesn't lead inevitably to the latter. The Federation economy is probably a fantasy, relying as it does not just on...
All right. So
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. That's a bit of a non sequitur that unchecked capitalism inevitably, inevitably results in slavery.
yeah, I would love to know how he came to that conclusion, because unchecked and complete free market capitalism is actually very self regulating due to the ethos of supply and demand, to where if you are if you are managing your business in a way that the public does not see fit, you're not going to be making any more money.
Unless there's no monopoly.
Yeah, unchecked, it can get out of control. I don't think that completely unchecked capitalism is the answer, because yeah, monopolies exist, and then you get to make up your own rules, and you get to say what happens.
I think Quark actually said that he was complaining in the second last episode of the series. He was complaining that Grant Nagus, what was his name?
Zach?
Zach, yes, was thinking about making monopolies illegal. And Quark didn't like this, obviously, because he didn't like the fact that you couldn't corner markets anymore.
Well, you could still corner a market without a monopoly.
You could do it with a conglomeration of different organizations, but then, that's not a monopoly. Then you do have a self-regulating system, unless you have a true conspiracy to corner the market as a group. But a monopoly, again, you get to make the rules because there's nobody to push back and make sure you self-regulate.
On a serious commitment to economic equality and social welfare, but also to things like replication technology, interstellar trade, and cheap, clean, renewable energy sources like fusion. But even if it is a fantasy, it can still be instructive. Imagine how profoundly our lives would change if we no longer had to trade our labor for money in order to survive. Seriously, take a few seconds and imagine that. Your basic needs, food, clothing, housing, healthcare, are covered. You don't need to earn them. You don't need to pay for them. They are yours from the day you're born till the day you die. You can still work if you want, but you can choose the work you do based on what it means to you.
And this is where we're getting into his pontification realm of things.
First of all, I think he doesn't understand that we're already on the verge of actually achieving that, which is why some first world nations are currently thinking about implementing a universal basic income.
Yeah, and that's why I felt necessary to go to that point and stop there, because of, again, you have a cultural impact of Star Trek here, where you can see the parallels between what the Federation, at least a sizable distance within its own boundaries, has been able to put forth as a possibility, and humanity actually striving to achieve that sort of goal without the necessity of the technology that is posited that would allow it in that universe. And it's just that, yeah, I think the better at resource management we get as a species without advanced technologies like replicators, the possibility for us to continue the path towards that universal society of limited limited need, to where
Actually, I slightly disagree on whether we would actually need replicators, because just take a look at the automation that's going on in pretty much every industry, right? From agriculture, we're currently in the phase where most manufacturers of, for example, harvesters are developing unmanned harvesting tractors, for example, and the amount of man hours per unit of produced good is going down so rapidly that I don't think we actually need those replicator units.
Well, no, that's what I'm
saying. There will be a point in the future, and I think this is coming quicker than we actually think right now, where the automation that's going on is enough that actually nobody will have to work, or at least not nobody have to work. Obviously, people will have to work, but it will be not a complete necessity anymore.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think if we keep striving for those intellectual and societal riches, we will be able to get there and actually be able to have a society where we can provide access to all of those necessities for life without the burden that is currently required in the current economic setup that we have. However, the pushback you're going to end up getting is actually from the older generation that has invested so much into the accumulation of financial and fiscal wealth that it really is going to require a dramatic mindset shift from the majority of the population in a whole to offset their individual greed aspect to it. And because that's really what it comes down to, is fighting the human nature of greed.
Yeah, that's what I tell everybody when they talk to me about universal basic income is, you're going to have those people that are just going to be like, "Oh, you're giving me money for free? I don't have to do anything." And then the rest of us that still work to pay into that system aren't going to want to work as hard, because why should we pay for those that are just, for lack of a better term here, freeload? So then the system could break down. Not saying that it will, but it could. And when
I actually don't agree. I don't agree, because every single modern nation, apart from one, has a system of universal healthcare. And where's the difference of actually giving money to people for them to buy stuff, or financing the healthcare system? Most people understand that there will always be people either in need of something because they run into a situation for which they actually can't do anything, that we actually kind of feel a responsibility not to leave somebody behind. And I think that's only a degree of scale, right? Because that's just a sliding scale. Whether you are willing to pay nothing for somebody else, whether that will be healthcare or security or infrastructure or anything, or whether this is a complete financing of somebody else's lifestyle. I think it's just a matter of a degree. It's just a sliding scale, and adjusting that a little bit, which I think can happen rather quickly, would do the job, in my opinion.
I agree. I'm not fully supportive of the universal basic income, but I can see the reasoning behind doing it, and I support that. I even support universal health care. But most of the people who I discuss with this just believe that, give free money to everything and it'll solve all the problems, and that's not entirely accurate and not a realistic expectation. And I play more of a devil's advocate in those situations, and it just snowballs from there with their argument to me. I mean,
I think the issue that I see is that there are two phases of, two general phases of this economy, and that is where people have to work. It's a requirement because of manpower, labor, and need to get the job done. And then later on, there's a phase where, due to computerization and other means, that people are not necessarily needed to do the jobs anymore. So those people are now freed up. And at a certain point, there literally aren't enough regular jobs to employ people. At that point, there should be enough income to give everybody that money to sustain themselves. But it's that gray area in the middle where we're building up to an economy where we don't have the work to give everyone, where you have that freeloading aspect where people can freeload off of the economy before nobody technically has to work because we have robotics to do everything.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, the Walmart here in my town is actually going through renovation right now. They've took out a majority of their check stands and are placing in
The self-checkout.
self-checkout, which, as somebody who works in the retail side of things, I find it abhorrent. But at the same time, I understand why they do it, and that could offer, if the employer would say, help you get trained to become a technician to repair said equipment, I think it would be a better an offset. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
To-
on the other hand, not all people are intelligent enough to become repairmen.
No, I know. I
That's
understand. that,
obviously where people are gonna left behind.
No, I understand that.
And we kind of have a duty to actually care for those as the technology, in this case, progresses.
Well, with that bit, and Furball, don't have to worry. We're actually going to be wrapping this up in time for you to do that, because I don't like these going much longer than 2 hours, because it keeps us on point. And getting to that, one of the changes, if you're going to be changing the economy from a production-based standpoint with the further automation, and there is that argument that there are some people who just simply do not have the technical or intellectual acumen to shift from the role that the machinery is now taking over to being able to maintain said machinery. This is where you also are going to have to address the education system, where instead of trying to push the majority of the kids along a similar path to a similar goal of higher education and everything like that, you can readdress that to more of a reactionary and fluid and multifaceted track, where if you identify someone who has an interest and ability in purely the arts, well, since we don't need to keep pushing people towards the manufacturing and these other professions, if you have that avenue and that ability to take these children who are showing this acumen in the arts and everything and give them that opportunity to go down that path, well, now you are actually attacking the issue from both sides of that, where you're catering the education to what is actually best for the individual, while also still keeping everything going for the society. So someone like myself and others on this panel who have the intellectual acumen for specific types of positions and everything, we still have that avenue to go heavy into the sciences and everything down that road. But someone who may not have that capability is not going to get discouraged by being pushed down a path that they don't have the skill set for.
Yeah. And just to go back a little bit, NANA stated that if we do go to this utopia where, you can do whatever you want for occupation, that he wants to watch porn for a living.
As long as
And I responded... Yeah, I responded, I'm sure that somebody's going to need to be a porn critic, so they'd be really interesting blogs to write. And then response to that, S2000 GT asked if he was going to be doing a 1 through 5 tissue rating system.
Nice. But, if it gets to that point and our generation has any chance of actually getting to enjoy the benefits of it, I have one request. Do not completely outlaw internal combustion engines, because I enjoy my motorcycle and would still love to ride it and hear even the audible output of the engine and actually feel that power from actually operating the throttle. So,
But my take on this is don't outlaw internal combustion engines, but make sure that the ones that are still allowed to be produced can run on renewable fuels.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would take that as an alternative.
Can you make that noise from a compact nuclear reactor?
Probably not.
And if
You
it
can
was making
artificially
that noise, you
synthesize the
probably
sound.
wouldn't want to be sitting on it.
Well, it depends. It depends on the maturity of the technology. Because one of the things that a little bit of an aside to a point that Steve made in his video with the whole clean, renewable energy sources. Does anyone remember the issue with the Malon in Voyager? They're doing...
They were dumping. They didn't master warp technology correctly, and their reactors produced some waste material that needed to be disposed of.
Oh, and Bjorn with 100 more sex. Yes, the sex. Love that talk. We seem to see eye to eye. And see that this is where I find it difficult with people and things, because I agree with some side of all sections of the political spectrum here in the U.S., which is why I get so annoyed and frustrated, because I cannot logically or ethically support either of the main political parties right now. I can't.
Agreed.
You know, that's the advantage of actually having 5 or 6 parties in your parliament.
Which, you know, if the U.S. could actually get to a point where that would work effectively, great. Bring it on.
Yeah, the only way that I think that we could get to the effectiveness of the multiple party system that Europe has, and this would be painful, my theory is that no bill should be able to come a law without 70% approval of both houses, because no party will ever have 70%. And after 2 or 3 years of not a single bill getting passed, everybody will get fired, we'll get new people in there, and it will force them to work together.
I like it. I have actually been an advocate for wholesale changes within Congress. Not exactly in that mold, but similar to that mold, for years, saying that there needs to be... And I'm even an advocate for term limits on members of Congress, because you'll have people who get in there and manage to get continually reelected and are effectively inept at their job. They're there, but they're not really doing anything. They're actually preventing things from getting done.
Yeah, it's more of a goal of preventing the other party than advancing your own.
Yeah.
And with the multiple party system, European parliaments, they are forced to work together. They have to work together, because there is no one party that has enough members in it to pass a bill.
Not necessarily true.
No?
At least on the state. No, not necessarily. On the federal level, most of the time, yes. But in most countries that are organized like the US, obviously each member state has its own parliament. And in those cases, there are often cases where one party has more than 50% of the electorate.
Okay. I've never followed individual state parties in Europe.
Bavaria. Not at the moment, but over its 70-year history, we actually had a conservative absolute majority for like 62 or something years.
So, getting back to the reason why I brought up the Malon and everything with that, Boaz, the Malons didn't want to let go of their luxury lifestyle on their home planet, and that meant high levels of pollution from the power plants, and that pollution was drafted to get disposed of. Now, see, here's the difference. Here's what happened is, Voyager identified what the issue was immediately because they recognized the Malons were using matter-antimatter reactions to power themselves. However, there was a type of radiation and radioactive waste that was generated that the Federation had figured out how to render inert and be able to deal with that the Malon haven't. So this was an issue where the Federation had the technology and know-how on how to do these types of reactions in a near zero waste and a zero harmful waste methodology that the Malon did not have. So just because the Federation had the ability to make it in as humane of an issue as they did, it doesn't mean that matter-antimatter reactors in general were this perfect type of power source for that. And it's like early nuclear reactors on the fission side of it. The earlier models had produced a lot of radioactive waste. Now, with refining to the methodologies, the amount of waste is reduced, but it still produces a wasteful byproduct. And a harmful byproduct at that. So, that's part of what I was getting to, is that just the principles of energy production that the Federation utilizes is not as perfect and clean as Steve was making it out to. Within the Federation it was, but it was because of how they managed the waste. Greed versus care for the environment, yet another perfect parallel to our society now. Yeah, I would agree with that one, Bo. So, with that, I don't know. Did you guys enjoy poking at another video from Shit Shives?
It was good. It's an interesting starting point for a conversation.
Yeah.
He has a follow-up video for this for next time if we want to.
Oh no, please don't.
Well, we are more of a democracy, but at the same time, my vote counts for more.
Yeah. David, I was on the brink of thinking you were making a German joke there.
We're all equal. You're just more equal.
Of my fellow officers, but ultimate authority for decision making. It doesn't mean I can't be swayed. Proper beer is preferred. But there are ways to manipulate the topics of the show. And I do open this up to recommendations from the audience as well. If you're not already a member of the Discord, Nightbot, you know what? We're going to be off air before Nightbot does it again. So I am going to force Nightbot to post the link to join the Discord. For those who are a fan of the show and want to pose potential topics for us to talk about in future installments, there is a Kanar with Damar section. Any and all recommendations go into the Starfleet Intelligence text channel, where we will evaluate the topics that come to mind there, and you also have different areas for different types of conversations as well. And
like
another
Bo's
100
comment.
sex. I didn't think close to political at the previous one. Anyhow, nerding out with you guys is just what I needed, so thanks. Well, you're welcome, Bjorn.
Glad you're here, Bjorn.
Bo, except for the parts where we could see his face and hear his voice. Nice.
Oh, gotta read the last part.
So fuck you for increasing my bleach consumption.
I just noticed that nobody in Star Trek was a German. That's said by
There's
Quickie.
a reason for that.
I actually know 2 counterexamples.
Do you ever think that maybe once they got rid of all the Germans, that's when the Utopia started?
You know what? Fuck you.
Hey.
No, there's actually two characters, major characters actually in Star Trek lore that I'm pretty sure are German. First of all, 7 of 9.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some hints about this. The most important one, obviously, being the name. That's typical German, Annika Hansen. And the second one is Kayla Detmer from Discovery.
I don't really watch Discovery. It hasn't earned its place yet.
Neither do I. I just read it up on Memory Alpha.
Ugly German troops. Good topic. Quote, why people hating on Discovery are as awful as people eating Chicago-style deep dish minestrone.
Because they are.
What is Chicago-style deep dish minestrone?
I have no clue. I'm assuming it was supposed to be a pizza.
But anyways, this has been enjoyable. It's time to actually go do other stuff and things, especially things.
Is there already a plan for the next time? For the
Actually,
topic?
topic, no. Scheduling, we actually, so let me get down to September.
It
So
should be the 14th.
yeah, so
3
with-
weeks.
so here's the conundrum, and we will settle this live on air as the end of the show. With there being 4 Saturdays in September, we can do it one of 2 ways. It seems that the audience does enjoy the twice a month, so we will continue with that pacing until another reevaluation and get the audience feedback. So if we plan it for 2 weeks in September, we can do the every other week like we just did, which would have us back on air Saturday the 7th of September in 2 weeks, followed up with
You mean Sunday the 8th at 5 a.m.?
Saturday the 7th at 2000 UTC, followed by the next episode on Saturday the 21st, or we can keep it at the first episode of the month being the second Saturday, so it would be 3 weeks off. But then that would put us at the 28th as the second episode with only 1 week off, and then we would be back on air on the 12th. So do you want the 3-week break now or from September into October?
I'd actually do a 3-week break. Never. Just do it every second week. Full stop.
Yeah, I'd say just every 2 weeks.
Every other
regardless
week?
regardless of the day of the month.
All right. Well, there
Oh
we go.
God, no! Check out S2000 GT's latest comment.
Oh, you know, he does kind of have a point, except Riker was
Excellent.
born in Alaska.
Alaska.
Yeah. So with that, we will see you all in 2 weeks. Until then, stay safe, and we will see you next time.